It is such an honor to be here, and I see some friends. Wow, the Rosners. I see. Oh, how are you? I see a whole bunch of friends. It's so nice to be here. Wow, Rechavia Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh. Amazing, incredible. I come to Eretz Yisrael often to give shiurim. I usually speak in how are you? Nice to see you. I usually speak in yeshivas and these types of places, but it's so nice to be in a community. And every time I come, so I try to bring back something for my kids. I've Kanai 4 kids growing up in Passaic, New Jersey. My wife and I, we grew up in Los Angeles, but we live in New Jersey because Hashem does bad things to good people, and we don't know why. And so I always try to bring something back for the kids. And over the course of the trip, I always try to find something that'll be interesting to them. And usually I don't. So usually at the airport, I'm like buying different things. And then we came on a family trip and our flight was delayed. And the kids walk into the store at the airport and they're like, we have all this stuff. What is going on here, right? So one year I was walking down the street in Menorah and there was a toy store. So I walk up to the toy store and he has a big bin of different toys and different objects. And I'm like looking through the thing, trying to find something for my son. And I pull out of this box, I pull out of it what looks to me like a miniature Santa Claus. So I say to him, in like all of my 12 years of yeshiva high school Hebrew, Mazeh, right? And he looks at me and he goes, Ze Chanukah Rav. So I said to him, Ze lo Chanukah Rav, Ze Saint Nicholas, ki hu nichnas derech hashimni, v'notnim matanot. He's like, Keliyahu bepesach, ken, Keliyahu bepesach. Chanukah is one of these chagim that permeate all aspects of our culture, of our life. Every study done about the Jewish population identifies that the most commonly observed ritual across the spectrum of affiliation in worldwide Jewry is not Yom Kippur and is not the Seder, but rather it is lighting Hanukkah candles. And we know that the entire environment becomes saturated with the symbols of Hanukkah. You walk down the street here, and everywhere you go, there's donuts, and your donuts are like mamish, like it's unbelievable. It's like our response to they tried to kill us is we're just going to kill ourselves. It's unbelievable, right? Latkes, oil, it's like unreal. It's like mamish everywhere. My favorite part of Hanukkah is that only the Jewish people would celebrate a victory by eating money, right? Like these chocolate coins that, and I don't know if you've ever tried to open one. You have to like grow a nail already from Sukkot. They're like encased in this titanium, and you pry it open a little bit, then you get a tetanus shot. And then when you open it up, there is the most mysterious white powder that's sitting on this piece of chocolate. So you blow off the anthrax and you take the thing out, and then you start to eat it, and it functions like no other properties of chocolate that you've eaten in any other part of your life. Chocolate usually melts. This like crumbles into some sort of substance that then seems to absorb all of the moisture in your body from places you didn't even know you had. But this is the Jewish people. We have such a sense of elevation and passion for our chagim and for our holidays. And when it comes to Hanukkah, there's such an infusion of culture. There's such an infusion of experience. And the question is, what really is the source of this type of elevation? Why did Hanukkah really become this central, foundational dimension of Jewish identity that asserts itself and projects its values and its ideals in such a significant way, that it's such a standing symbol of Jewish culture, right? That the menorah is one of the most iconic symbols of Judaism recognized throughout the world. I remember that I used to be the head counselor of a camp in California, and we showed up at the camp, and it was a YMCA camp. You know what the YMCA shows? We rented a YMCA camp, the Young Men's Chavrusa Association. So we show up at the camp, and at the front of the camp, there is a gigantic cross. So I walk over to the reverend in charge of the camp, and I said to him, Reverend Mike, Reverend Michal, we can't have this at the front of the camp. We're going to have visiting day. Everybody's going to come, and they're going to see this Salem. It's beautiful. I'm not saying it's not beautiful. It was like 6 amos high and 3 amos across, and it had the shear of the Chazon Ish. Very beautiful, but Lamaisa, like this can't be what we do here. So I said, can we cover it? He says, no, it's very disrespectful to cover it. It's a taisus and avodah zarah. You can't cover it. I said, okay, fine. I said, we have to do something. So he says, Rabbi, don't worry, I'll take care of it. I see him walking towards the thing a half hour later with wood, hammer, and nails. I said, Mike, I just like, no, you don't have to get biblical on this. It's like, so he says to me, no. And he walks up to the cross and he puts up a board here, and here, menorah. So then when everyone came for visiting day in August, there was a giant menorah welcoming them to camp with a very accentuated shamus and bass. So everybody in the world knows the symbol of the menorah. Everybody in the world knows what the menorah is about. Where does this come from? So I'd like to begin, if we all have a packet. The first time in the Torah that we seem to elevate hadlakas ha-menorah as a more central feature of spiritual life, one that transcends perhaps some of the other elements and the other dimensions of our world of Mikdash. The Torah tells us in Sefer Bamidbar, in the beginning of Parshas Ba'aloscha, Dabir el Aaron, says the Torah, speak to Aaron HaKohen v'yamarta Elov, and you should tell him, Ba'aloscha es haneros el mul pinei ha-menorah ya'iru shivas haneros. That the Beis HaMikdash has to be more than a concentrated space of spirituality. The Beis HaMikdash has to be more than an environment with which we engage and experience a sense of elevation that's personal and that is internalized within ourselves. That the Beis HaMikdash has to project and illuminate the world beyond the confines and parameters of its particular existence. That the menorah symbolizes the notion that the Mikdash is not just a refuge, is not just a space we go to anchor in spiritual connection, but rather that the entire notion of a Mikdash Hashem stands as a radiating force of spirituality and light that can be projected throughout the world. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Aaron in a very particular command in Sefer Bamidbar, you are responsible for lighting in the menorah. Rashi immediately asks a very simple question. Lama nismecha parshas ha-menorah leparshas ha-nisim. The end of Parshas Nasa, which is juxtaposed to the initial psukim of Parshas Ba'aloscha, depicts the dedication of the Mishkan. And in the dedication of the Mishkan, each one of the tribal leaders, each one of the Nesiim, brings a particular configuration of karbanos, and indeed they were identical, and they play a part, they play a role in inaugurating the new Mishkan Hashem. So immediately following that procedure, Kadosh Baruch Hu comes to Aaron, he says, and you're going to light the menorah. So Rashi says, Loma nismecha parshas ha-menorah leparshas nisim. The entire Torah is not just a random collection of values and ideals. The flow, the narrative, the juxtaposition of one idea to the other always reveals something that speaks to the essence of what it is that the Torah is intending to convey. And so Rashi says, why are these two things next to each other? Answers Rashi. Because lefi kishira Aaron Chanukah Nisim, when Aaron saw this entire procedure of all the Nesiim participating in the development of the Mishkan Hashem, Chol sha'azdato shel Aaron. He became incredibly despondent. He became depressed. Why? Shelo haya imahem b'Chanukah. Because all of the tribal leaders were assigned a role except for him. Right? A number of years ago, our shul built a new Beit HaKnesset in Passaic, New Jersey. Don't worry, we used Jerusalem stone, but it was from Long Island. Anyway, the point is, we built a beautiful new Beit HaKnesset. So when you build a new Beit HaKnesset, you have a dedication. So you imagine you have a dedication. The donors speak, the president speaks, the guests speak, the builder speaks, everybody speaks, and then that's it. Then they go, and the rabbi has nothing to do with it. So that would be very odd. That would be very incongruent with what you'd expect. You'd expect the rabbi to be convening the whole thing. He's the spiritual leader of the congregation. He's the one that's galvanizing the community in the effort to build the Beis HaMikdash. Where is Aaron? So Chol sha'azdato shel Aaron. So Aaron became full of consternation, and he was very concerned. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Aaron, Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chayecha, by your life, Shelcha Gedola Mishelahem. Your role, your contribution, Aaron, is greater, is more transcendent than theirs. We're in source number 2, right? Why? She'ata madlik umetiv es haneros. Because you, Aaron, may not have been part of the foundational ritual that brought the Mishkan into life, But you, Aaron HaKohen, you are entrusted with the sacred duty and role and contribution of kindling the menorah every single day. So immediately asks all the Rishonim. Aaron did lots of things every single day, right? Aaron was in charge of Karbonos. Aaron was in charge of the Ketoras. So the Ramban says that the menorah is different. Why? Says the Ramban, because the menorah is the one aspect of the Beis Hamikdash that would transcend the actual standing of the Mikdash itself, right? We have elements of Jewish life that are symbolically resonant and remembrances of what was in the Mikdash, but there's only one ritual from the Mikdash that perpetuates beyond the destruction of the temple, and that is lighting the menorah, which we continue to do every single year and will be doing very, very soon. So the Ramban writes this whole thing of the menorah and Hadlakas HaNeros, it's special to Aaron. It's special to Aaron because ultimately his descendants, the Hashmonaim, would vanquish the Greeks and they would reestablish the Beis Hamikdash, the whole miracle of the Chanukah story. So you're entrusted with the menorah. You're entrusted with it now and you're entrusted with it in perpetuity. Here is the question. If we look at the Rambam in source number 4 says something so fascinating. We know that in order to serve in the Beis Hamikdash, what do you have to be? What do you have to be? Can I serve in the Beis Hamikdash? I cannot, right? Can you serve in the Beis Hamikdash because you're wealthy? You cannot. What do you have to be to serve in the Beis Hamikdash? You have to be a Kohen. You have to be a Kohen. That's what you have to be. That's the way it goes. That's Jewish life. You're either Kohen, you're not a Kohen. So, and what happens if Yaakov Glasser decides, I'm so passionate, I'm so interested, I'm so motivated, I love the Beis Hamikdash so much, I want to serve it in any way, and I go and usurp that opportunity and walk into the Beis Hamikdash and serve in the Beis Hamikdash, what happens to me? Yechayev misa. Okay, in Judaism we're always very incremental. So that's it, death penalty. Okay, you're not allowed to serve in the Beis Hamikdash unless you're a Kohen. So listen to this. Says the Rambam in the second part of source 4. V'chein hadlakas haneros k'sheira bizarim. The ritual of lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash did not require a Kohen. A regular Jew, like me, a regular Pashut Jew Nebuch from New Jersey, could light the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. And then the Rambam says, Lefichach. Now, he has to address a problem. What's the problem? We're about to say in Al Anisim, that the menorah is positioned in a section of the Beis Hamikdash where, guess what? Someone who's not a Kohen is not allowed to go to. So the Rambam says it's no problem. Im heitiv ha-Kohen es ha-Neros, the Kohen prepares the Neros in the Beis Hamikdash. And listen to this. You have the donor standing on the outside, v'hotzion lechutz, and he carries the menorah out of the Beis Hamikdash. Muterlo lizar lahadlikon, then the regular Jew lights the menorah and the Kohen carries it back into the Beis Hamikdash. That is what the Rambam writes is a legitimate, appropriate, and halachically acceptable fulfillment of the mitzvah to light the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Imagine, the Kohen carries it out, we have the ceremony, you light the menorah, and then the Kohen carries it back in. What is the problem with this? The problem with this is, basically what the Rambam is saying, is that anyone has the capacity and the license to light the menorah. But Rashi said that the reason why this mitzvah is directed particularly to Aaron HaKohen is because Shelcha Gidola Mishelahem, because your role is transcendent of everyone else's role. That there is something exclusive to your connection to this mitzvah of Hadlakas HaMenorah. That lighting the menorah is unique to you, Aaron. All the Jews got to be involved in dedicating the Beis HaMikdash. But there's something that you and your descendants get to do that they don't get to do, which is light the menorah. Well, if anyone could light the menorah, following the appropriate logistical arrangements of bringing it out and bringing it in, so then in what way do the Kohanim enjoy any unique status and stature and having been granted this privilege, this unique opportunity to engage in Hadlakas HaMenorah? Everyone with me? That's the question. What do you mean, Shalcha Gedola Mishelahem? Anybody could light the menorah, says the Rambam. Anybody could light the menorah. And there's another Well, we won't even try. I'm jet lagged. You'll say the word on your own, right? Now we all fly El Al, which is very exciting, especially since I have status on United. So I get to sit in the economy minus part of the plane. I'm like in charge of the line in the back, if you know what I'm saying, which is good because I'm a managing director, so I have managerial skills, so I can figure out how to arrange it. What does it send people back? It's all great, but I'm a little tired. So so that's the question. That's the question on this Hadlakas Menorah. And there's another challenge, which is we know that in the laws of Chanukah, when it comes to our menorahs, we're going to light the menorah soon, right? We're going to light the menorah soon. So the halacha is the Gemara has a discussion whether or not Hanacha osa mitzvah or hadlaka osa mitzvah. What does that mean? Hanacha means the placement of the menorah, meaning you just have to facilitate that the menorah is lit. So if you light the menorah in your basement, and then you carry it up and put it in your window or here in your doorway, so that's considered an acceptable lighting of the menorah. The Gemara's other possibility is that no, you have to light the menorah in the spot where you're obligated to light the menorah, in the window or in the door. And we follow the halacha in source number 6, that hadlaka osa mitzvah. You have to light it where it needs to be, which is fascinating since we just got done saying that the Beis Hamikdash, which is the paradigm for all of this, which is the source of all of this, permits one to light the menorah outside the Beis Hamikdash and then bring it in. So those are our two questions. So now let's engage Chanukah. Let's engage Chanukah in an extraordinary way, and we are going to answer these questions. We know that the Gemara tells of 2 potential frameworks for how we light the Chanukah candles. First, we're told that the Gemara says, mitzvahs Chanukah in source number 7, ner ishu beisel. The fundamental mitzvah is 1 candle per home. And you're done, right? You don't have to get started with all the yeshivas that send you those boxes with just enough colors of the ones the kids like, that they'll fight the whole Chanukah. You know what I'm talking about, those like colored boxes that hate children. So you don't have to worry about that. 1 candle, everyone can have a red one. It's all good. 1 candle for all of Chanukah. A mahadrin, someone who's mahadrin. We know mahadrin, right? You only eat at mahadrin. So if you're mahadrin, so then ner l'chol echad v'echad. Everybody lights a candle. And then if you're mahadrin mina mahadrin, which is like you're on the El Al flight and the meal comes and it's like 6 layers of plastic and you have to pierce them all and none of them crunch up for some reason. I don't know, they should make the airplane out of this substance. So mahadrin mina mahadrin, machlokes. Beis Shammai says, poches v'holech. You start Chanukah with a full menorah. You imagine on the first night of Chanukah, you light all the candles. And from there, you diminish. Poches v'holech. Beis Hillel is like what we have. The full menorah, that's not like to the 8th night of Chanukah, where no one's talking to each other, right? That's not to the end. The first night of Chanukah, when you're making the Shechiyanu, and you still like most sur, and everything's good, right? That's, you light 1 little menorah, 1 little Chanukah candle, and then mosif v'holech, you grow. What do we do? There's not anyone in the world who does Beis Shammai, nobody here has ever been to a Chanukah lighting on the first night of Chanukah where they light all the candles. You always light from the first and then you grow. And we would think that makes sense because Yahadus is so growth-oriented. We embrace the notion of incremental trajectories of growth. So it makes sense. You start small and you get big. But listen to this. If we take a second and we think about all of the other Chagim of the year, do they fit the paradigm of Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel? Let's think about it. On Pesach, the first night of Pesach is everything. Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, the mitzvah of Menorah, the mitzvah of Matzah, of Dalid Kosos, of Halel Shalem. What happens after the first night of Pesach, or after in Golus, the first 2 nights of Pesach? What happens? What's Pesach? 6 Flags, right? What is it? It's Tiyulim. There's nothing to do. Maybe, according to some Rishonim, maybe, there's a mitzvah kiyumis to eat matzah, right? And you're not allowed to eat chametz. But are there mitzvahs to rest? No. It starts big, and then it diminishes. Sukkot, the first day of Sukkot, the mitzvah eating a sukkah is a mitzvah chiyuvis. You have to eat a sukkah. That's why if it rains, you have to stay up later. That's why, and the rest of Sukkot, the Gemara says, you want to eat, you have to be in a sukkah. You don't want to eat, you don't have to be in a sukkah. The first day of Sukkot, the mitzvah of Daled Minim is Doraisa. L'kachtem lachem bayom harishon. You have to take on the first day. That's Daled Minim. And then what happens the rest of Sukkot? All right, to remember the Beis Hamikdash, we take the Daled Minim. That's Sukkot. Shavuos doesn't really have mitzvos, but it has minhagim. And what do we do on Shavuos? We stay up the whole night, the whole first night learning, and then coma for the next 3 days, right? It's like literally to wake anybody who stayed up the night on Shavuos for another 3 days. It's like there is more napping as a result of Shavuos night than there is in any other part of the Jewish calendar. So what happens when we look at the paradigms of our Chagim? They actually more fit the notion of Beis Shammai than Beis Hillel. We actually, when we think about it, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, we start big with a full menorah, and then Pochis v'Holech, right? We have a certain clarion call for engagement with these dimensions of the Chag, and then we have a lingering aftermath where we can process and internalize and relate to and make sure that it's something that's lasting. But this notion of ascending intensity of engagement that comes through in Hillel's paradigm is actually entirely dissonant with the way in which all of our other holidays operate. Why would that be so? So I want to suggest that the reason that is so is because there's a fundamental difference between Chanukah and every other Chag of the Jewish calendar. And that is actually manifest through a comment of the Rambam, where the Rambam writes, because there's discussion in the Rishonim, how the history of this all unfolded. What day did they walk into the Beis Hamikdash, and what day did they actually start lighting the menorah? The Rambam writes that they walked into the Beis Hamikdash on the 25th, and they started lighting the menorah the next day, right? And many discuss, well, then why doesn't Chanukah start the next day? The whole thing is about the menorah. So some say that because the war is also part of the miracle of Chanukah. But there's another possibility as well, and that has to do with the uniqueness of Chanukah itself. You see, all of the other Chagim of the Jewish calendar, all of them, from beginning to end, position the Jewish people in essentially a passive and deferential role with a reactive responsibility. Kadosh Baruch Hu comes and liberates Am Yisrael, and then we stand up and reciprocate by being proud members of the Jewish people. Kadosh Baruch Hu comes and gives the Jewish people the Torah, and we reciprocate by embracing its opportunity to live a life of meaning and purpose and impact in the world. Kadosh Baruch Hu comes to the Jewish people and cares for their well-being over the course of their journey in the desert, and we in turn express a degree and a standing embracement of emunah and bitachon in the Ribono Shel Olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does, and we respond. Chanukah is the inverse. Chanukah represents the moments in Jewish history where we do, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu responds. The miracle of Chanukah does not begin with the oil lasting longer than it should have. The miracle of Chanukah begins with the courage and the tenacity of the Jewish people to walk into a Beis Hamikdash that has been defiled and ransacked by a foreign power and not accept that reality as defining to their existence and to their truth. The miracle of Chanukah begins when the Jewish people find within themselves the capacity to transcend their circumstances, the ability to not accept the status quo as what's going to ultimately define the Jewish people. The miracle of Chanukah begins not by us sitting back and Hashem saying, do a miracle. It begins by Matisyahu and his kids getting together and saying, Ad Kan, we're going forward. We're going forward, and then when they go forward militarily, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu does a miracle, and they vanquish their enemies, then they walk into a Beis Hamikdash where they had full halachic license to be deferential to the reality of that landscape. And not like the menorah, because at the end of the day, they didn't have to light a menorah. They didn't have pure oil. But Banku, the Jews, search and they search and they search until they discover, until they find the opportunity to be able to create this lighting of a menorah. And it was a halachically compromised solution. Because at the time they did it, they had no idea if they would be able to develop more. They should have looked at the Beis HaMikdash, saw the situation, and immediately engaged in the process of processing new oil. And when they add it, they'll light the Beis HaMikdash, they'll light the menorah. They didn't light the menorah the day before Chafei. They didn't light the menorah then. We're not lighting the menorah now. And so, therefore, the entire essence of Chanukah is the sense of initiative that comes from the Jew to not simply relegate themselves to the seeming historical facts on the ground that convey their own narrative of what Jewish history should be and what Jewish history will be. The entire miracle of Chanukah begins with a sense of courage and passion from Am Yisrael. And so therefore, that's why Hadlaka osa mitzvah. That's why even though in the Beis HaMikdash, it's enough to facilitate the lighting and let the environment elevate the experience, in our homes, we have to do it. Hadlaka osa mitzvah, there's a pride and there's an essence of what it means to bring that illumination to the world. And this is where Aaron HaKohen re-enters the picture. Who was Aaron HaKohen? There are two brothers and a sister that lead the Jewish people through the desert. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron are very different people. Moshe Rabbeinu is what I would call, for those who are in business, like a top-down manager, right? Moshe Rabbeinu, you couldn't really look at his face. He's up in the heavens. He's meeting with angels, and he's conveying top-down to the Jewish people, this is what is going to be. What kind of leader was Aaron? Aaron was bottom-up. Aaron, as the Mishnah tells us, Hillel Omer, of all people, having mitalmidav shel Aaron, oev shalom, v'rodev shalom, oev esabrios, umekarven laTorah. Aaron add a social dimension to his leadership. Aaron brought forward an ability to help others. Aaron was with the people. It was bottom up. And the Rambam tells us in the Perish HaMishnayos that his approach, his modality of engagement was that he would encounter an individual who themselves was living a compromised lifestyle of Torah, and v'nosan lo shalom, and Aaron would immediately give them and provide for them a sense of affirmation and dignity and love and elevation. Aaron immediately would give them and would infuse them with a sense of embrace. And then, says the Perish HaMishnayos of the Rambam, when that person would go off, they would say to themselves that I am worthy of Aaron's attention, of Aaron's affection. There must be something within me that has more potential, that has more capacity. Aaron HaKohen's modality of inspiring others was not top-down. It was not to instruct and control and demand. Aaron's modality of engagement was to help people see the greatness within themselves. That's what a Kohen is about. We know we're all called Mamleches Kohanim. So what does it mean that we have a tribe of kahuna? The role of a Kohen is not to dominate and control the Jewish people. The role of a Kohen is to help every single Jew discover the kahuna within themselves. We all have a spark of leadership. We all have a capacity to impact and illuminate and change the world. Everybody could do something. And that's why we don't even look at the Kohanim during Birchas Kohanim. We put the talus over our head. We're looking at ourselves and what it tells us about who we are. Aaron HaKohen sees that he's not part of the Hakamas HaMishkan. So you know what his greatest fear was? His greatest fear was that now becoming the minister of the Beis HaMikdash, that his role would change to the role of Moshe. Now you're the head of the Beis HaMikdash. You're top down, you're more spiritual, you're more elevated. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling him, that's not what my Beis HaMikdash is about. My Beis HaMikdash is about the menorah. It's about taking the light to the people. It's about empowering people and elevating people. It's about inspiring people and bringing them to a place where they can make a difference. And that ultimately is the vision of what it means to be part of the world of Chanukah and to be part of the world of Baaloscha. That's why the menorah is in the window and in the doorway, because it is reinvigorating within ourselves that sense of passion and determination that we have, that we are not limited and defined by the circumstances within which we find ourselves. And if you look at the rest of the sources, you will see that it's fascinating that when the state of Israel unleashed a competition to decide what would be its symbol. The symbol that was ultimately chosen was the menorah, but not just any menorah. The symbol that was ultimately chosen was the depiction of the menorah that exists on the Arch of Titus. And the reason for that is because historically, what the Jewish people were trying to tell the world is we are not defined by what's embedded within some rock sitting in Rome. We can take that image and we can harness what it symbolizes, and we can advance Jewish history and the future of the Jewish people. That is our capacity, and that is ultimately what the menorah is about. And that's why Chanukah is Mosif V'holech. It starts with something small. It starts with something small because it starts with our contribution, in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reciprocates with his miracles. We are living in a time of tremendous Hadlaka Osa Mitzvah, where the Jewish people are saying to the world, we are not going to be defined by your narrative. We are going to speak for who we are. We are going to illuminate what we believe. We are going to advance where we want to go. We are going to move the Jewish people and Jewish history forward. And that is the essence of Chanukah. And we can only hope and pray that, like the Chanukah of times of the Mikdash, that will be reciprocated, as we have already seen that experience so far, with the miracles, with the nisim and the niflos, ala nisim v'ala niflos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to elevate and to advance the Jewish people. May the Rabbanu Shalom give us all the perspective and the strength to be able to find that capacity within ourselves and within the larger Jewish people. And may we see these great miracles and live to see the lighting of the original menorah in the Beis HaMikdash once again. Have a wonderful, wonderful Chanukah.